What's going on, everybody? This is Jerome Moore, host and creator of Deep Dish Conversations. And firstly, I want to say thank you for all love and support, and thank you for exploring the perspectives of social change with me on this platform. I want to encourage you all to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube and on your favorite podcast listen platform. And make sure you give us a 5-star rating if you're loving the Deep Dish Conversations. I appreciate all of the support again. I hope you all enjoy this episode.
This is deep dish, right?
Yeah, well, let's get deep.
So I'm going deep on both sides.
Gert, how you doing?
Hi, so good to be here.
No, it's good to have you. I'm really excited about this. About this conversation we're about to have, and just really about to use this brave space to be very brave about just some questions I have personally, thoughts, and just like narratives, right? That just goes on in the LGBTQ community, and yeah, just getting into all of that good stuff and. What does that look like here in Nashville? And like, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Here for it. And I love invoking that like brave space, right?
Yeah. A lot of people like safe space, right? Which is fine too. But, as a black person, it's not really safe, right? So brave, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk more about you. Let's start off like you're from Pennsylvania,
Yep.
right? Now you made your way south. Like,
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about your journey and like who you are.
Yep. So I grew up in Pennsylvania, spent the first I guess like half of my life there, and then moved down here to Nashville 13 and a half years ago, and really just fell in love with Nashville as a city, and
Right.
just really love just this like deep history of like justice work that just kept me here. My name's Gert. My pronouns are they, them. So I'm a non-binary, transgender individual. I'm queer. I love using that word to describe myself. I know
Right.
that term has some like baggage with it that we can probably talk about.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
But that's the word that I use to self-describe that feels really good to me, that encompasses just my identities. And I'm a therapist. That's my day job. So working with folks in the LGBTQIA plus community.
It's growing. That like I sometimes is like I don't know how many like letters is attached to it now. Somebody help me.
Yeah, that's so real, and I think like that speaks to like the diversity of what it means to be a part of like our community. It's just like, oh yeah, there's like so many different ways to fit in and belong.
And so like this is gonna be good. This is gonna be because I have so many questions that I just don't know what to do sometimes.
Yeah.
And a good example is this, right? I was talking to Brianna Perry. I was talking to Brianna Perry. And so she was saying, and I didn't ask her about this because it was just on my mind, like, are we saying different things or are we saying the same thing? So I'm going to ask you. I was saying like heterosexual, right? Straight heterosexual. And then she was saying like cisgender, or am I saying that right?
Right, yeah.
And so I was like, are we talking about the same thing? What does that mean? Is one better to use than the other? Is more respect? So I was like, that was blowing my mind. So I was like, it's something I got to ask Gert about when you come on. And so like, let's just get right into it. So it's so many things like that now, right?
Yeah.
And someone that is part of that community, like, is it difficult for you so you remember it, catch on to, understand, or what?
That's so real. I mean, I think there is a part that there's always like this growing edge because
Right.
like the queer community is just always changing. We're always learning more things about ourselves, about
Right.
our identities.
Right.
Language is always changing around how we self-describe, and I think that's like a beautiful thing to be able to like self-describe and to like choose our language.
For sure.
It's such a like powerful thing. And there are other ways that it's really easy because I'm just like, this is my community, right? This is just like the water I'm swimming in. This is the air I'm breathing. So it's just like,
Right.
cool. And I really respect that there's like a lot to keep learning about. And
Right.
I mean, especially for someone, it was like, okay, are we talking about cisgender people? Are we talking about heterosexual people? Like, what are we talking about?
Right. What's the difference?
Yeah. So if we're talking about gender,
Right.
So like for me, I said I was like non-binary
Right.
and transgender.
Right.
So if we're talking about gender, I don't love binaries in general, but we're either talking about like cisgender or transgender people, or like
Okay.
non-binary people.
Okay.
So it's how people understand their gender identity, their gender
Right.
expression.
Right.
But if we're talking about like sex or sexuality,
Right.
then we're talking about usually like heterosexual or like queer in some kind of way,
Right.
bisexual.
Right.
So yeah, we
Okay.
don't use the word homosexual too much anymore.
Okay.
There's some like baggage with that in the therapy world, right? Like homosexuality was in the like diagnostic and statistical manual
Wow.
as a like mental disorder, and up until like the 70s.
Who
So,
knew? Like
I
I
know.
don't.
I know. So it's got
Who
that
knew?
baggage
Yeah.
with it. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, but now we just say like LGBTQIA, or
Yeah.
I just use queer as an umbrella term.
So when did you start identifying as queer?
That's a really good question. I mean, I know that I've always been queer, right? But I think it's a process of like coming out, right? So like coming
Right.
out to myself and realizing
Right.
like, oh shit, like that. This is a part of who I am.
Right.
Like that took some time for me. And it was also really complicated because I was in community with like queer folks who were really struggling.
Right.
And it was really hard to be like, oh, is this like the journey that I'm going to like go down, right?
Right.
Like suicidality, like I had a friend
Yeah.
die from like, complete suicide. So it was just really hard for me. There was a lot of trauma in realizing like, okay, this is an identity that I'm really going to like honor and respect about myself. It means moving toward the hard. It means
Right.
moving toward the like the difficult.
Right.
I also grew up in a theological context that didn't make a lot of space for queer folk. So I really had to also grapple with that. So I really didn't come out to myself until I was about 23 or 24. So it took some time.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, but it kind of makes sense though, because a lot of us don't know not necessarily who we are, even when we like 24, 25. We still a lot of us just trying to figure out a lot of stuff, right? But there's so many intentional pressures to make a choice, to make a decision,
Yeah.
especially depending on like your family, household, and just like,
Yeah.
no, you need to go this way, or make up your mind, or even like the whole constructs of college, right? Academics, like when you're 17, 18, at that particular moment, you're supposed to know like what you want to be and do and major in.
Jeez.
At 17, 18 years old, right? And then like stick with that, right? And like accumulate all this debt based
Right.
on this decision that you have to make right now, which is crazy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What was your support like? Like when you came out, from your parents, from peers? What was that like?
Yeah, it was really liberating for me, like individually. It was just like, just this like moment of release. I
Right.
think there was also a lot of fear. I was talking with someone recently who was talking about like we have this like collective trauma around like being queer and like sharing our stories, because there is this, even though we may come from like the most amazing family, there can still be this fear of like, what if I get kicked out? What if I get cut off? What if I am no longer welcome in the spaces or the communities or the like faith traditions that I like once was
Right.
very welcomed?
Right.
So even though I knew I came from a family that like I knew and like hoped and like imagined would be really affirming, there was still always that like
Yeah,
fear in the back of my mind.
Sure, especially from what you see in personal experiences.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
You know about, yeah.
But I came out to my parents on Mother's Day. It was not expected. Like I did not plan it, but I was just like, okay, my mom and dad are here. I had come out to my sister beforehand, and you know I felt super safe there, super affirmed. It was like, okay, it's like a test run, and now I'm gonna come out to my parents. And, and it was fine. They had a lot of questions,
Right.
some of which I could answer, some of which I didn't have the answers to, or I needed to like, let me get back to you. on
Right,
that.
yeah, pending.
Yeah, but my
Yeah.
mom was really great. My mom asked questions that made me keep questioning my own identity.
Right.
So she was like, well, like, what do I refer to you as? Like, you're not my daughter now, you're my child. I'm like, yeah, like that language feels better, right? I'm non-binary, so
Right.
using language that feels like gender affirming to me will feel
Right.
really important.
Right. How do
yeah.
you? Because I believe if you're not in that community or your proximity to like the queer community, gay community, right? Language can be tough, can be hard, and maybe you can unintentionally offend someone, right?
Sure.
Because if you're just looking at people, you may think, oh, he or she identifies as kind of what they present as, right?
Right.
From physically.
Yeah.
How do you go about like respectfully, like saying, hey, no, I identify as like queer, or these are my pronouns.
Right.
And not make it, I guess, weird for you or the person, right? How does that happen?
That's so real. I think like yes to all of that. Like yes, we cannot know anybody's gender identity or their pronouns just by looking at them.
Right.
Like if we assume, we're just kind of making a
Right.
misstep. And for me, like if sometimes I get misgendered and it's like it doesn't matter, right? It's like
Right.
the checkout person at the store. Okay, like
Right.
okay, if I get ma'amed a little bit, fine. Like I'm gonna roll with it. It's not a
Right.
big deal. But if it's someone that I'm in community with or like in relationship with,
Right.
like that's a different story. Like my
Yeah.
expectations are higher.
Right.
And it's also just like, listen, we're all learning. We're
Yeah.
all like figuring it out as we go. And
Yeah.
I'm fortunate also to be in a lot of spaces that really create a norm of saying like, let's say our name, let's say our pronouns so that way
Right.
no one is assuming, that we're just making it explicit on the front
Right.
end. So
Right.
that way we can just like meet each other on a good first step.
Right. So I have something that I want to talk to you about pronouns, right?
Yeah.
I am not a pronoun person. I'm not a pronoun person. And this is my reason.
I'm ready.
I respect people that use pronouns, right? I have no problem with people identifying their pronouns, right? For me, it's like, hey, I'm Jerome. You know, if you want to know more, I guess you could ask me, right? But I'm Jerome. There's nothing more, nothing less. And the issue I have, not the issue, but like for me, the internal battle that I have with pronouns is the limitations, right? What confines to pronouns, right? Because I have friends of mine who feel like they're a god, right? They identify like, hey, I'm a god, right? That can be seen as a pronoun. But I'm pretty sure, and I know for a fact, excuse me, if I put my pronoun down as God, that's going to be a different conversation, right?
Right.
But what's the limitations, right? What am I right to identify if I feel like that's who I am, represent
Right.
myself? Am I in the right lines, or is there some type of confined limitations to what pronouns we as human beings can identify with?
Yeah.
And so, what is your thoughts about that? All right, you're the first person that I've had this conversation with that I know that is from that community.
Gotcha.
So that's why I'm really excited to have this dialogue with you and get your thoughts.
Yeah.
And I know you don't speak for the whole community, but
Right.
just your,
I'm so glad
but
you said
yeah, but your personal perspective, so I can try to get some insight and grow, like during this conversation,
Yeah.
and see if I have some blind spots.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad. Thank you. Yes, I do not speak for the whole queer community, right? Like I speak for myself.
Right.
And yeah, I think pronouns are, this really interesting like phenomenon, right? Of like inviting and telling other people how to talk about us, right?
Right.
So it's like, here's how I want you to refer to me. Some people are like, don't refer to me, right? Like,
Right.
don't refer to me.
Right.
But if you are to talk about me, here's how I would want you to like respect me and talk about me
Right.
in this way. And right, yeah, I also struggle. I mean, I'm working with like a lot of like queer teens, some teens who are trans or maybe just experimenting, like what are my pronouns? And sometimes it's like I'm experimenting with it, right? Like call me it, right? Not like he or she or they, but like
Right.
I'm trying on it.
Yeah.
Or I'm trying on like a neopronoun like Z or
Right.
there's just all different kinds of ways to refer.
This is my, I guess, personal worry. Because I believe everybody should be identified however you want, especially if you express that, right? My worry, well, I have two worries. One is, this one is really not a worry. It's just like something I think I just don't like, right? Like one is when I'm into these spaces, a lot of it, because in this work, right, I feel like it's pushed. Like you have to identify. Like everybody put their pronouns. Like it's not like if you want to. It's like everybody like put your pronouns, and I never do it. And then like I'm willing to have that conversation on screen at that particular moment if you're gonna ask me why I didn't put my pronouns, because I'm just that type of person. But nobody has ever asked me, Jerome, like you didn't put your pronouns. I don't want to. You just call me Jerome. If it's there's no confusion with that. Yeah, that's my name. Yeah. And so it's that piece. I feel like it's being pushed a little bit in all spaces, or I would say progressive spaces. I feel like I feel like it's being pushed, but I understand why. But then the secondly, it's like that. Where does it? That kind of is it go to X, it, W, O? It's like what? Like and is there like a committee that is okaying these things, or saying, okay, now we're gonna start saying is means such and such like, so
Right.
that's, so I don't understand it. I don't understand it, and I wonder if you do. If you like, or do you have some of those things? I'm like, oh, I can see how it could just keep going and going and going and going and going and going and going.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how language works,
Yeah.
right? Like, language is always evolving. We're always
Right.
adding new words. So,
Yeah.
like, I do feel that piece of, like, okay, things are always changing.
Right. And this is
also-
from my perspective as a straight man too. So I have my whatever is in there working. That's how I'm speaking.
Yeah.
And so correct me and like check me on any of
Sure.
this. Sure.
Well, and I think part of like being in spaces where it's okay, what are our pronouns? Let's
Right.
name them. I think the intention is to really create like this inclusive, like we don't want to assume.
Right.
And also sometimes, and I've been in spaces like with folks who are in their own gender identity development, they're not quite sure how they want to be referred to.
Right.
They're still figuring out what feels good to my own ears and to my heart and my body. Is it he?
Yeah.
Is it she? Is it
Right.
they? And like people who are in the middle of their process sometimes just are like, use whatever, or like,
Right.
or some people are just like, don't use pronouns, right? Just call
Right.
me by my name.
Right.
Just use my name if you're going to refer to me.
Yeah.
And so I think part of that is just respecting that, like, gender identity development, right, for all of us, not just queer folk, not just like
Right.
cis, like transgender people, but like for all of us,
Right.
is a process of understanding who taught me what my gender is. Like, do I agree with it? Do I agree with like the gender that was assigned to me at birth?
Right.
Or am I in some wrestling places right now?
Right.
And like that can be it is a really vulnerable
Right.
process.
Yeah, this is like, this is I think because of this conditioning, right? Especially for myself, and probably I'm pretty sure many others, but I'm speaking for myself, of like growing up and learn behavior and seeing things, right, a specific way, especially around gender, right?
Yeah.
Because gender and sex is like two different things, right?
Right.
Sex or male or female, and like if you're somewhere in between, extra chromosome or whatever, those
Yeah.
things happen too. And I don't know what that would be.
Yeah.
I don't know if you end up on X-Men or something like that, but like, so you have sex, and then you have gender, which is different, and now you have like parents that are like, hey, I'm gonna allow my child to pick their gender, right? Which is mind blowing, right? And very controversial too.
It can be.
It can be very
Yeah.
controversial too, and like still in the world that we are currently in society, and how people are thinking. So it's like it's so much,
Yeah.
and it's like, where is projection? Like, where does that
Ooh.
begin and end? And like, is it wrong that I say, hey, like I have a male by sex, so therefore I'm identifying him as a man, like
Right.
he is, right? Is that wrong, right? Is that, or is it like, or are we leaning to a way where we're gonna allow our children to pick their gender wherever they can, to like can consciously and maturely to decide that,
Yeah.
right? So those things is like that, I like, just in my mind, like it's a lot, it's overwhelming, like you just don't know. And a lot of it too, I think, is like my own like biases and conditioning, and like just own like learned behavior and beliefs that I think is just, it's hard to detach from and accept, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like, well, like I'm comfortable, I turned out pretty good, right? I didn't have no kind of struggles or barriers or anything like that. So it's like,
Yeah. Right. That's so real, right? This idea that we live in a world that is deeply committed to the gender binary, right? There are boys or girls, there are
Right.
men or women.
Right.
And to the point, I mean, I would say, this is again just my politics, my beliefs, that's a violent binary.
Okay.
That it doesn't create like spaciousness for all types of gender diversity. And I think that, yeah, right, that some parents do this thing where they say, yeah, okay, all I have to go off of for my baby is their genitalia.
Right.
So until my child tells me otherwise,
Right.
I'm going to just do the best that I can. And if they have a penis, okay, great, this is a little boy, and I'm going to use
Right.
he, him pronouns for this child.
Right.
Until they tell me otherwise.
right.
And then, other parents just say, no, I'm going to raise my child like they are non-binary until they're able to tell me, who they are.
Right.
So it really is about, either way, like making
Yeah.
space for like our kids to tell us who they are.
Right.
Which is not a childhood experience that I had,
Yeah.
right? Like I had a gender binary really rigidly assigned to me. Like, okay, like I was assigned female at birth, and this is how my life is going to go. And this
Right.
is like the expectations, gender expectations and otherwise.
Yeah.
About like, who I'm going to be. So yeah, just creating a little bit more like expansiveness.
Right.
Making more space. For me, that never seems like a bad move.
Yeah.
Just more hospitality.
Yeah. I think it's just, as we're all learning and growing, right? Like, where do we take out our own like beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Because I believe this way, and so this is my child. I kind of want him or her to kind of probably go this way a little bit too,
Sure.
and then how do you even create a non-binary household? What is that? I don't even know what does that even look like? Is it like,
Yeah.
like, and so like, is that a class for that? Like, is that a book I can read? But like those type of things, like that, I think people like myself and others just don't know, right? And these are
Right.
things like I love to be in conversation about, right? Even if I don't agree, I want to just know and create space,
Right.
to where I can still be respectful and kind of be. And if it does happen, I know how to properly and in a healthy way respond to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, gender shows up all the places, right? In
Right.
the toy store, it's like which kids can play with which toys,
Right.
And just how children are socialized and how they play.
Right.
We know that little boys engage in more like interactive play, and little
Right.
girls, tend to, because of how they're socialized, do more like social play.
Right.
And even things like that, to say like, oh yeah, we're gonna just resist, those stark differences, and just invite like our kids to be who they clothing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What clothing children wear.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those are really difficult conversations. I'm thinking, and I'm gonna tell you a real life story that just happened to me, right? And you tell me. I have an idea of what you probably gonna tell to me, but this is what happened, right? So I'm looking for daycare for my son, right? Me and my fiance, we're going on these daycare tours, right? And so I found a really good daycare, and the teachers are explaining to me like, hey, this is going to be doing really good energy. And then she started talking about costumes that they have, right? And this is how she prefaced it. And this is these are black women too, right? And so I think that's a thing too, right? Especially when we talking about like the gay community, right? And so she looked at me and she said, well, I just want to let you know, I don't know if you wanted these, this is how she prefaced it, I don't know if you wanted these type of parents, but, like we have different costumes, and like I'm not going to like push kids to choose like the tutu or the bumblebee or anything like that, but, like it's a possibility that they could, like your son could grab the tutu, right?
Yep.
Right? And so this is what I did. And so... This is what I did. This has happened like a couple of days ago, like last Friday. I said, well, preferably, this is the words I use, I wouldn't want my son wearing a tutu, but I understand. That's what I said. And then a lady in the background that I didn't even see, right? She said, that boy, how he said that, don't want his son to know, you gonna scare him away. You know what I'm saying? So she started going in like in a facetious way, right? She said he probably don't even want him using no pots and pans. I said, no. Like, it ain't like, they ain't going that far. Like, he got pots and pans at the house. He plays with pots and pans. So, but that was like a real life conversation that I just had.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like these are conversations that maybe when we was growing up, right? Like daycares wasn't asking or talking about, right?
There's
just
the boys box and the girls
right.
box.
And so they just really, it took me back. And it really took me back. I said, man, this is like a awkward kind of situation. And I have my preferences, right? But is that wrong to have preferences? What I want for, like, as I at this point identify as a son, a boy, right? And then my own thoughts of like this black masculinity, right? And how I see that in this structure now, and how I kind of see it kind of being kind of taken away a little bit or targeted, right, from Black men, from my perspective. So all that played a part into me saying preferably.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that story for me, in my like my personal story, and like how does that play into like these things just socially?
I'm so glad you named that piece around like the masculinity, right? Just like, because that was going to be my question for you. Like, what is scary about seeing your son in a tutu?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And for me, it always goes back to like, what's scary, right? Or what's the fear? Or like, I mean, some people are like, it's about hate. I'm like, I think it's about fear.
Yeah.
Right. So like, what is scary about that? And then I hear you saying like, gosh, there's this like Black masculinity piece that feels really under threat. And
Right.
I really love, I don't know where I picked this up, but this idea that it's not masculinity, but it's masculinities, that there can be a multiplicity of masculinities that can look a lot of different ways.
Right.
And then if we're too narrow in how we think about masculinity, right, across race, right, that we're just doing all of ourselves a disservice. So thinking about, can masculinity incorporate, like, I don't know, like Lil Nas X, like wearing an amazing kilt, like on stage, right? And is that a brand or a flavor of masculinity?
Right.
You know, and again, like that is I think a cultural conversation within like subgroups, and also can be just a really broad, you know, just wondering.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing goes for femininity too. I think there's like, and I don't think they're binaries, right? I don't think they're polar opposites. I think that there is a blend, or something that exists beyond those two very, you know, narrow buckets.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know if that answers or.
Yeah, no, like that masculinities, like they really help. Yeah, no, I think you answered my question, and also you just got me thinking, like, and it's scary. It is scary because like What is this conversation 10, 20 years from now look like, 50 years from now? Like, what does society look like? How are we communicating who we are in the next 20 and 30 years? And I just think many of us have gotten so comfortable, right? And then you have to change. And you have to adapt and be intentional about it, because you can not know or really just not be a part of that kind of society or their work, and your proximity to it can be so far away that you could just never know, right, and never get it, not just because of your proximity to it. And I think that was kind of my growing up personally, like my proximity to like queer, gay community. It just didn't have any, right?
Me too. Growing up, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
My mom had a classmate. My mom went to community college like much later in life, and she had one classmate that she went to school with who was like a trans woman. And I hear my mom talking about this trans woman, and I like something just lit up inside of me, like as a teenager.
Right.
And I didn't understand it, but I was just like, something about this person feels important, and yet no access, right? Like I really didn't know like that many like queer people growing up.
Right.
Maybe like a teacher or two.
No,
you know, but they were closeted, right? Like,
yeah, I didn't know any. Yeah, no, like, and I always tell this story when I'm in these type of spaces to kind of like put the cultural like aspect to it. We would grow up playing basketball and sports and stuff, and we would refer to somebody that just wasn't good or not playing well as like, oh man, like you gay, or like soft, right? And kind of using those as like synonyms, right? Yeah, slurs. Well, yeah, and didn't know they were slurs, right? Because we like 6th grade, 7th grade, right? Didn't know anybody that was gay, and just don't even know where we picked it up from. But we knew that, oh, like this is implying that like you're weak, soft, like a sissy, right? And we didn't see it. We didn't think it was harmful. We just thought it was teasing, right? We looked at it as teasing, like, oh man, you gay, man, you know what I'm saying? Not knowing anybody ever in life that was gay, right? Where did we get that from, right? And so that's why I ask people from the gay queer community, like this is my experience, right? If I was a 12, 13-year-old kid, like. And some people still have a 13-year-old kid mindset when it comes to these things. So give them patience. Don't counsel them right off the bat. Like give them a little patience, because you don't know how they receive that word and how to use it in their intent. Now, if once you tell them like how harmful it is, right?
Right.
Then that's a different story,
Right.
right? Especially if they're gonna just do it publicly and just keep going. They just refuse to listen to the people that's affecting. That's different.
Right.
But that's why I always like just try to go into like why well what did you learn how to use that, right?
Right.
Like, and not just be like, no, you know wrong, because they literally may not know.
Right.
Because of the proximity to it.
Right. And like that just speaks, I think, also to how just entrenched in like dominant culture, homophobia and transphobia, they just are there. It's just so entrenched. And yeah, like we're as a society, I think we're moving away from that and really
Yeah.
trying to be like, oh, I can't say that anymore, or like, damn, that's really hurtful, that's harmful.
Right.
That's like not the move.
Yeah.
And also, right, there's this, like we have to unlearn. We're unlearning like all
Hell
of
of a
this.
lot of unlearning.
Oh,
But it helps when people like yourself and others speak up about it, right?
right.
Because if you all remain silent, I and others never know that it's hurtful.
Right.
And it continues to be accepted. But the more that, which we're seeing, especially with social media, just how mass communication is just received now, like, okay, we know now, like, oh, this is hurtful. Right.
And Gen Z is not putting up with it. Like they are just like, the kids are all right. Like they are just like, like we are not, we're not doing it.
Right. And so you look at like millennials, like I was born in 90. As a parent, that I have a child now, right? Like now I have to be thinking about hold on, because that childhoods are completely different.
Yeah.
Like things that I would have never considered bullying growing up is like ultra bullying, right? Now. And so it's like adapting to that, right? And even though I might not, I'm like, man, if y'all call it bullying, we must have been doing something crazy, right? But accepting that and say, okay, well, this is your time, your generation, this is where things are.
Yeah.
And so let me make sure I raise you appropriately to be like an ally and to be like not toxic and a healthy peer, student, friend for your surroundings. And I tell you, it's hard. It's tough. Like it's really it is. It ain't even got to the really hard part. My son ain't even in school yet. And it's already like, this is different, because we all have that, I think, like our parents probably how, well, back in my day, type of mentality, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's like that projection, right? And so it's like having to foresee that projection, correct it, unlearn it, and then do better.
Yeah. What a responsibility, like to parent. Oh my gosh.
In this world,
Yeah. Yeah.
so much unlearning, right? It's so much unlearning. I want to throw out something else to you. And then I want to kind of get more, after this, I want to kind of get more into like what you do on the therapy side and like that experience, right? Pride, right? Like see the parades, the festivities. It's a huge thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I always wanted to ask this question. And so I'm asking it to you. I feel prideful to be straight. How would it be seen if there was a straight heterosexual parade for the prideness of like how we identify?
Yeah.
I got a question. I just want to know.
Sure.
How would that be received by the queer, gay, lesbian community, and just probably your society? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've definitely seen those moves, people being like, yay, like straight pride or whatever. And I think those types of moves really miss this like analysis around like what like marginalization is.
Right.
Where it's like, oh gosh, like y'all are really missing it. That, like we live in a world that actively marginalizes and is vulnerable to certain populations, and to be proud, right?
Yeah.
In those contexts, out of our marginalization,
right?
Very different than being like prideful, right? Out of a place of like dominance. Like I'm in this dominant culture. It would be like honestly seeing like a white pride parade, right?
That's what I was gonna say. Would that be like the kind of the reciprocal of it? Like if we seen white people saying like white power, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's different than black power because of the experiences, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And just saying like, listen, like, can we just see where we are? Can we see our context for a minute here?
Right. Yeah.
Like, okay, like white people, you get all the space. Straight people,
Right.
you get all the space.
Right.
Right. You don't have to be
Yeah.
scraping out and saying, I am so proud of myself.
Right.
And I think this also speaks to, intersectionality, which you mentioned Brianna earlier. Like Brianna Perry taught me about intersectionality, right? And this
Yeah.
idea that like I can't separate my queerness from my whiteness, right?
Yeah.
So understanding that like, yeah, I'm marginalized in some ways, right, as a
Right.
like queer person, and I also have a lot of privilege in other ways because of white supremacy,
Right.
and how I benefit from that as an institution in this country.
Yeah.
So it really is, right? Like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you had a queer black woman or a queer black trans woman, like on the like, she'd be telling you something different.
Right. Yeah.
So just really
Yeah.
respect. I can speak to some things, and then there's other stuff. Like,
Yeah, but just identifying and knowing that it exists, I think that's like allyship, right? Like, and just calling it out, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of allyship, what are some of the best practices somebody like myself could be an ally to the queer, gay community? Yeah, because I've never been to a gay club.
Right.
Never. But am I curious? What is going on? Kinda, but it's like,
We'll go.
but then I'm like, damn, do I want to be seen? Like how? Because that thing is I'm putting it out there, right? I'm being very vulnerable right now, y'all.
Yeah.
But this is the thing though. I'm pretty sure a lot of other straight men think about that, and had that battle, but then it's I shouldn't care what other people think, right?
Right.
But it's it's not even other people. This is me. What do I think about? Yeah.
That is so real, and I think that's part of being an ally is working out our own homophobia, our own.
Yeah.
I mean, and all people have internalized homophobia, right? Because we live in a homophobic society.
Right.
So to say okay, how do I continue to strip away my own,
Right.
my own fear around that?
Right.
When people see me, or what do they think?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I know who I am, right?
You're
I know who
right.
I am in my in my full dignity.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
resisting oppressive cultures, it's hard.
What's going on, everybody? This is Jerome Moore, creator and host of Deep Dish Conversations, and I know y'all enjoying this episode, but just real quickly, make sure y'all hit that subscribe button and hit that notification so you can be notified when we drop new episodes and interviews, all right? I appreciate all love and support, and let's get back to this episode. If you feel like you're really confident in who you are, it shouldn't matter. And if it does
Right.
matter, how confident are you really, right?
Right.
And
Or is there something to look at?
Yeah. And I'm asking myself that right now. Right?
Yeah.
Because Church Street, it's Tribe. I know, I know friends that go there. It kind of be looking lit. It kind of be looking like it be, but it's
Yeah.
what do I do if I'm approached? How do I navigate those situations?
Yeah.
People might want to take pictures. How, it's those are questions that I ask myself, right?
Yeah.
That are kind of me making excuses, right? And preventing myself to just leap over that bridge, right?
Well, and that is what homophobia, that's what it wants you to feel, right? It wants you to feel this distance between
Right.
us. It wants us to feel like there's this separation.
Right.
Because if you come over and say, I'm with you, I'm
Right.
with them, then we have solidarity, and then, change can happen.
Right, yeah.
But, this system is trying to keep us separate.
Yeah.
I'm getting chills talking about this, right?
Yeah, no.
It's trying to keep us apart, and it's trying to, leverage our fear.
Right.
So to be courageous is a really, radical act.
Yeah, and because it's in this level of courageousness, right? Because it's one thing for me and you to have this conversation. We can go out, we can have a good time, we can go out to eat to a bar together, right? But that changes that hesitancy, kind of heightens when you talk about, Jerome, come to try it with me.
Right.
Oh, whoo.
Right?
Gert, look at
the time.
Yeah, look at the time. But and so it's just knowing that that's and it's kind of heartbreaking to myself, right? But just really having this conversation with you and opening up, damn, that's homophobia. That's kind of that's inner workings that I need to figure out, how to because I don't see myself as as being somebody that's homophobic,
Right.
right?
Yep.
But it's
Ugh.
like, but it's mannerisms though, right?
Yeah, and it's like telling white people that they're racist. It's like,
Right.
come on,
Right.
like white people are inherently racist, right?
Right.
And under a system of white supremacy, and to like call people and just be like, hey, that was like a white supremacist thing that you did.
Right.
It's like, oh shit, yeah.
Right. It isn't, and I like to make sure I mention this, like white supremacy is not exclusive to white people.
Right.
And so I
just
always
like homophobia.
Yeah. So I always like to mention that. That just bring me up a good question. I just gotta answer this now. What does homophobia look like to somebody that is part of the gay community?
Yeah. A lot of that looks internalized, right? So like, so it's, what's a good example? Okay, so I was working with someone, this was a client, I won't use any names or anything, but if I'm working with someone who's just like, I feel like I want to be a teacher, I'm a gay man, I feel like I want to be a teacher, but there's something inside of me that's telling me not to do that, or that's bad, or that's wrong. And then digging a little deeper and realizing, oh, right, because under homophobia, we've been taught that like gay men are predatory, right? Or that gay people are predatory of children. And that's just so not true, right? That's a completely homophobic projection.
Right.
But when it becomes internalized, it makes us doubt or question our own goodness.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's real. Damn. I got a lot of growing to do because like you bringing out stuff that I think because of imagery, right? Propaganda and that predatory thing of like that quote unquote gay teacher,
right.
like being predatory on my son, right? So it's like, damn, I don't think I want like, and so I think the worst, right? Not thinking like the teacher's credentials and not thinking about like the teacher understands his or her like kind of like boundaries and they're there to teach. They're not there to project or like do anything, right?
Yeah. It's a really old stereotype.
Yeah.
Really old and really violent. And it's, right. It's just one of those things. I mean, I was talking about it in middle school, like with my like classmates, right? Oh, I think this teacher's gay. Or it's like,
Yeah, that was the thing. Yeah.
Right. And it's just like, oh yeah, like that's like, it's so embedded in our culture and it's, it's just not true. Right. I mean, like, yeah.
And so in your work, right?
Yes.
As a therapist, you do marital therapy, family therapy, right? What does that do for your own kind of like liberation and being able to talk to like folks that are coming in and maybe a part of the queer, gay, lesbian community, right? And I'm pretty sure you take on clients that, are all clients, right? No matter how they identify, right?
Vanilla.
But like, vanilla, yeah. So, but like, I'm pretty sure like because of like just your expertise and who you are and what you, how you identify, like I'm pretty sure a lot more people feel comfortable that it's from that community, from the gay, queer, lesbian community, talking with you about these things. So, like,
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope that there's a sense of, right? Like I always think like, gosh, just because we have these like shared identities or these like commonalities doesn't mean I know your full story, right? So I really try to just not assume anything.
Yeah.
But for my own like liberation and my own, sense of like, fulfillment and like, I use the word vocation, right? Like my calling into this work.
Yeah.
To be alongside and to just bear witness to and just be in relationship with folks like from my own community is just so beautiful. It's such an honoring like place to be.
Right.
And it also, I learn every single day from my clients, the people that I work with, right? Like their insights bring up like stuff for me where I'm like, oh yeah, or, or my own ponderings, my own wonderings, like, oh, I need to check that out in myself. So it's, that's the kind of therapist that I am. I'm really collaborative. So like there's two experts in the room, right? Like I went to school for some stuff, but like whoever I'm sitting with, they are the expert on their life. Like they know their life better than anyone else. Like, so just being able to bring like the meeting of minds and saying like, let's talk about, what fulfillment, what liberation looks like for you.
Right.
Like,
How did you get into that field, right?
Ooh, it was a winding road actually. So I started off at the divinity school at Vanderbilt. So I have
Okay.
a degree in theology and was really interested in like mental health questions around like church folk and like various faith traditions. Like, what does
Right.
mental health look like? What does thriving look like?
Right.
What does flourishing look like in these like faith traditions? And then I kind of, yeah, sat with those questions and finally was like, I think I'm gonna be a therapist. So I went back to school and
Right.
was also just really, yeah, thoughtful about my friend who had died and just like, oh, like there was
Right.
not support there for her.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was just a big part. And then my own journey
Yeah.
of like my own like understanding around what is my like mental health, what is my what do I
Right.
need.
Right.
Um,
What was some like your biggest challenges, like just coming out, internal work, and then like finding community, right? What was just some of the like the biggest challenges that you faced?
Yeah, I think a big one was deciding or figuring out like how out I wanted to be like as a therapist, you know?
Wow.
Like if I'm closeted, then maybe like I'll get more like rich straight white clients, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then I was like, no, like it was just really this grappling of like how out do I want to be? And then I
Right.
just really yeah, it was came to the conclusion like I'm just gonna be me. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna be out. I'm gonna be as honest as I can be, and the people who resonate with me or who want to find me, like they will, and yeah, and they have.
And so there's a lot of social justice movement around the LGBTQ community, just nationally, right? But we're gonna focus on Nashville because this
Yeah.
is where we are. What are some of those kind of movements and kind of like maybe legislation?
Whew.
It's a lot. Like I know it's a lot.
Yeah.
That are very just harmful, right?
Yeah.
And then there's people that's trying to combat these things, right?
Yeah.
So what does that space and what does that movement look like here in Nashville?
Yeah, well, I think about like who are like our queer leaders, right? Who's
Right.
leading like queer liberation? A couple of groups that come to mind are Song, Southerners on New Ground. There's a chapter here, and that's a crew that's really working to like dismantle like the prison industrial complex,
Right.
just abolishing cages and all the ways that we cage people. And cops and courts, right? All of those
Right,
ways.
all of those ways, yeah.
Yeah, the criminal punishment system.
Yeah.
So just and the intersection of like that many queer folk are criminalized, right? And then we have a history. Queer folk have a history of being criminalized.
Right.
So just really grateful for like their work. I also think about Chris Sanders at the Tennessee Equality Project, who's really got a like pulse on what's going on with all the legislation,
Right.
especially targeting like trans youth,
Yeah.
which is just really horrific and
Right.
inexcusable, like unacceptable.
Right.
So
I believe if I read this correctly, right now, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this as an athlete too. If you are transgender in the, let me make sure I get this right because I'm thinking and trying to figure it out.
take your time.
As an athlete, I want to say in Tennessee they don't allow participation in certain, or maybe all the sports, like in like youth, like in high school, middle school, right? So if I was born, if my sex is a man, right, but I identify as a girl, I can't participate in girls' activities, right?
I think that's the case, or it will,
Okay.
or that's the bill that's trying to be
Bill.
passed.
Yeah. What is your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's highly discriminatory and
Okay.
does not create space for like our youth to
Okay.
participate in activities. I know some folks, right, and there's this so I'm going to use this like term like TERF, right? These like trans exclusionary radical feminists, right? So TERFs would say, well, we have to protect our little girls, right? We can't have these like trans girls coming in and
Right.
beating them at sports
Right.
and all of this thing. And it's like that's not the debate.
Yeah, well, so what is the debate though? Because when I thought about it, when I heard, I said, well, it kind of like if you're born, if your sex, I would say, if your sex is, because I looked at sports as like a sex kind of competition, right? Not necessarily gender. Like, so, like, if you're born a male, males play against males, unless it's unisex sports, right? Like what they do in most like Pee Wee and stuff is like girls and boys. And then if your sex is a woman, you know, because from my perspective, there are physical advantages and disadvantages as youth, and that's why it's kind of, you know, separated from my understanding, right? I'm trying to I'm walking on eggshells right now, y'all. And that's so from my perspective. So it's like from competition, right? And so that's why to me, like, well, that like if your sex is a male, you tend to be, you know, a little faster once you reach a certain level. I'm gonna take that back. Once you get in high school, you tend to be a little faster, a little stronger. There's different skills or motor skills from being a sports person too, right? There's no way, and I'm gonna say this respectfully, but also just with confidence. There's no way playing basketball, no high school girl was beating me in basketball, right? It just wasn't happening. It just wasn't. I'm not gonna say it's impossible, but damn near, right? Because I was just that good. That was just that good. And so I couldn't imagine her saying, okay, well, I'm transgender, I identify as a guy now. I don't see how playing with us would benefit him at that particular time, but her, it seemed like it would be kind of a unbalance. Right. So that's my perspective of it.
And that's a perspective that a lot of folks have.
So,
that they root into this argument around like bodies.
So is that not valid? Let's talk about it. Is that not valid?
I'm gonna say something controversial here.
Go ahead.
Again, going back to the gender binary, I really want to abolish that binary.
Okay.
And just say, like, listen, like, whoever wants to play a sport, maybe we say it's not by gender. Maybe we're not dividing by gender.
And that's why I say sex, which
sure,
I think
or
is
sex,
different.
right?
Okay.
And just saying maybe it's by, like, skill or, like, ability or, you know, like, I was, as an athlete, like, I was in college, I was racing against, like, men some of whom I was, like, in, like, okay, we're running the same
pace. Yeah, same
so
time.
I think, like, there's a way to, if we truly are committed to, like, being creative,
right,
and not resorting to, like, the really easy, like, gender binary, if we're really committed to staying, like, creative and meeting people where they're at and creating access for all people of all bodies,
right,
because I know, right, that there are some little boys who would love to do some sports that are traditionally, like, maybe more, like, feminine, or, you know, or just, like, activities, right, dance, right, so just saying, like, listen, can we get rid of some of these, like, gender binaries, and meet people, and I don't know.
But I will say this. I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
I just think, and maybe it's not a bad thing, but I think you open up a wormhole, right? But and this wormhole becomes, like, we know in military, for example, right? There's different benchmarks that if you're a woman that you hit, you pass, and then it's your man that you hit that you pass, right? Right. There's a binary benchmarks, right? Right. Now, what happens if everybody has to hit a certain benchmark, right? Regardless of how you identify. Is that a good thing or bad thing if we start seeing more people that identify as women not qualify, but like what happened? Or is it just it's just a more rigorous? You know what happens there, right? And so that's my thing when I think about, and that's why I tend to use sex and not gender because they're different to me. So that's my thing. Like I think like if you started in one area. Like, do you make it exclusive to, like, okay, this only applies to, like, sports only? Or does it go into, like, workspaces where, like physical benchmarks has to be met for you to even be eligible to do the job, right? Yeah. And so, like, where does that go? Gert, where does that go?
Yeah, how do we navigate our standards that we're trying to set? How do we, I mean, I think that's
tough.
I think it also is. I think this conversation is also bringing up that like, gosh, there's so much more than like the male body or the female body, right?
Yeah.
Like there's such a diversity of bodies on this planet.
You're such a therapist.
And like,
She's theraping you right now,
I mean,
y'all.
it's just right. Like, there's no like
Yeah.
standard body type.
Yeah, true.
And just saying like, listen, like, can we really make space for diversity? Can we make space for difference?
Here we're gonna throw in science.
I'm not a scientist.
I'm not a scientist either.
Okay.
So we're gonna do real basic low level science, right? Real low level science, right? So here goes science, right? Science, and just in I had to find the facts in the notes, right? But so we're still on the physical thing, right? Science says, well, the average man, I'm losing an example. Well, there's certain jobs to where like you have to be able to do a certain force with your hand to screw on bolts and stuff like that, right? And
Yeah, a lot of tools are made for men's hands.
Yeah, and stuff like that,
Yeah.
right? That's why there's like literally probably like no women in the field, right? Not saying they're in leadership and administration, but in the field doing this work because of just the strength that it takes, that just like physically, science wise, like many women just don't possess that power, right? Or they're not training like bodybuilders or anything to get that power, right? And so, like in a situation like that, right? Like science says, well, this is quote unquote a man's job, right? Right? And creating the like kind of gender in jobs, right? Pretty much. Like where does that fit into all the like these creative ways of like navigating these things? If it's like, yeah, like I'm looking at numbers and like I know by average of like men and women that's on this planet, right? Like this is quote unquote like the men only have the power, majority of men only have the power to do this type of work or do this type of job. Excuse me. How do we navigate and combat things like that from a physical standpoint, right? Because I don't see the argument from my eyes as it's like men can't do what women do or vice versa, right? I don't see that as the argument,
Right.
or it shouldn't be one, right? It shouldn't be. We know like everyone is capable of doing something, but it's like at what level, like what scale can it be done at, right?
Well, and I think you're bringing up I'm hearing in this question, like, how do we navigate like patriarchy, right? Ways that like men, like male or men is used as like the standard or the norm. Just like under white supremacy is the standard, and straight, right. Is like the standard. So it's like, how do we combat like those types of norms? Like, and going back to like that idea around tools. Yeah, like tools, like most tools, like power tools are built for like a certain larger person who happens to maybe be a man. And but if we want to create like access for like all people, it's like maybe we need to think about like those standards, right? And like how we're building the world around us. And
I just wonder like how many people are talking about this stuff like openly, right? And just saying, and then like talking openly, and then like letting their like biases and stuff be shown through their conversation, right? Which is probably shown through mine, but that's okay. That's why I'm talking to Gert about it, right?
Learning.
So she can help me learn, right?
So they can help you learn.
So she just corrected me right there, see? So they can help me learn, right? I'm saying.
We're getting practice.
Yeah, it's practice. It's so innate, right? It's so innate.
I know.
And so they can help me learn. And so
you're doing great.
No, I really like again, these are just conversations, like kitchen table conversations that like I've never had an opportunity to talk with someone about, right? From like the queer community. And like just to pick your brain about it and getting checked myself, and just also like looking at myself internally, right? And catching those blind spots. Because it's easy when you're talking to people that identify with you and say, yeah, man, you're right. You're right. And I know I sounded pretty good. I know I had a good perspective on that, right? And then coming in here and talking to you, which is totally different.
Yeah. Ugh. And I appreciate that, right? Again, it takes courage. I believe it takes a lot of courage to like step into the unknown, to step into spaces. I think that's part of what I love about therapy too, is inviting people to step into the unknown, into the question, into the, I'm gonna just explore this and see. Doesn't mean I have to try it on or buy the thing. I can just try it on, see how it fits. So.
Do you have a therapist?
I do. Yeah, I've had a therapist off and on. Gosh, since I was in divinity school, and that was just really important in my, in my own process. And yeah, I'm the kind of person who really believes that, like, I have to be doing my own work consistently, and to take care of myself, right? To be able to show up.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Where can people like myself and others go here in Nashville to have like more of these conversations? Like, say, like, or is it, do I need a therapist, right? To talk about my feelings and my thoughts in my inner workings, like specifically around the gay, queer, lesbian, non-binary community. Like, are there spaces where straight people like myself or anybody, right, that can go in and like, hey, I just want to talk about these things and see, like, am I thinking right? Do I need some work?
Right.
I don't want to be homophobic. I really want to intentionally like unlearn some of these things, but I need help. Yeah.
I wish there were those kind of spaces. I don't know. I mean, I think therapists are a great, place to start and be a great conversation partner.
Right.
I think also just like asking like your queer friends or just saying like, hey, just being honest, like you said, like I really want to like unpack this or work this out. Do you have the energy? Do you have the spoons, the capacity to meet me there?
Right.
I also know there's really great educational resources. Sean Riley is a great like educator. There's a couple of like groups out in Vanderbilt. Glisten is also really great. They work in schools to like facilitate these kinds of conversations.
Right.
So there are pockets where these conversations are happening. And yeah.
And so I want to, this just came to my mind because I'm still thinking about the tribe thing, right? It's still on my mind. So from my lens, a lot of times, and just from what I've seen, is that there are those from the pride community that are proud, like very proud all the time, right? It's like I see it as like bringing attention to themselves, like aggressively. I've even seen situations where somebody was just looking at a person that was, I think, maybe transgender, and like maybe looking in curiosity, but like they just blew up and say, what you looking at, like that type of thing, right? That type of behavior, right? And no telling, like maybe they just tired of people looking at them, trying to figure out like who they are, right, or what they are, right? How does one navigate those situations?
Oh yeah.
I think that's just simple. Like, how does one navigate those situations and think about like looking in curiosity, but also like avoiding like moments and situations, but also understanding when you may see somebody who's being flamboyant and like kind of just confident, and maybe not taking it as like them seeking attention, but maybe they're just being themselves, or okay, we understand. Oh, this was my perspective a lot of times. Okay, like I think I get it that you are transgender or queer or whatever, like, but you don't have to, like, to me it was like being loud. But maybe I was thinking wrong. Maybe I was thinking like that's maybe just how you carry yourself. But like, how does the like? And I'm just putting it all out there for you, Gert.
I love this question. I think there's like layers to it. I think one layer is that like who's doing the looking, right? Like if it is like a violent look, especially we just know this in our community that like Black transgender women are just disproportionately they're violence will happen to them, and it's so unfortunate. And
Yeah.
so just being like, okay, like what is the quality of this gaze? Like who's
Right.
looking at me right now? Is this a threatening? You know, like who's looking at me? And I love that like queer people have each other's backs. Like,
Yeah.
what are you looking at, right? Like back up.
I'm curious. That's all.
Right, but there is this
Right,
like
yeah.
almost like defensive,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we, like
Which is understandable,
to
right?
stay
'Cause-
safe,
Yeah, to stay
right?
safe, yeah, for sure.
So there's
Yeah.
that like layer to it of like
Yeah.
how are you looking at me? And then also like to be seen, right? Is really powerful and really
Yeah.
important to be like, look at me, here I am, I see myself, do you see me?
Right.
And like to be seen by each other in the queer
Right.
community is really powerful and
Right.
really profound and like I believe important and like essential. And that's something I've really missed about the pandemic is just like going into queer spaces and just like seeing each other.
Right.
Be like, I see you, you see me, we know, right? We're
Right.
in community. So that's part of it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's like, look at me, here I am, see me.
Right.
And that may be as a like form of protest, right?
Right.
It may be like, if the Westboro people, and it's
Right.
like, okay, well, I'm going to make out with my girlfriend over here in front of
Yeah,
you, right?
right.
Like, it's just, so really staying curious about like who's
Right.
doing the looking and
Right.
who's trying to be seen by who.
Right.
And what the
Yeah.
intentions are, like you mentioned earlier, like what are the intentions?
Right, yeah. I'm just coming up with so many other questions. I know we can't talk it forever, but like I'm doing some self work right now,
That's
so I'm gonna
great.
throw another one.
Here
Throw
for
another
it.
one out there. I'm just taking all the risks today. The movie Moonlight.
I thought about that earlier when we were talking.
The
Yeah.
movie Moonlight, right? I think it's a great film, and I say that not having watched the whole thing because I just couldn't to watch like two men like it's hard for me to do that, right? And I check myself and I say, man, like I can't, like, so is that, and so this is the question: if me being a straight man, right, can't look at, right, I have to literally like it does something to my soul. I can't appreciate like the art of in the movie, the production, right? It's just like is that homophobia, or is that like just me not like liking looking at something like some people don't like to see people getting killed on the screen, or like a lot of blood, right? Is that a difference? You like help me understand that.
It could be a little bit of both, right?
Okay.
Like I think there's a part, right? Again, because homophobia is just
Yeah.
the norm that's been instilled in us,
Right.
Right? To see like two like beautiful black men making out, it's like
Right.
that may just be like, whoop, that's right, that's wrong, that's bad, that's countercultural, that's whatever.
Right.
But it could also be, some of your own stuff coming up around,
Yeah.
what can I tolerate? What can I see?
Yeah.
I think, maybe checking that out with yourself, like if you were to see, two like men kissing in front of you and it wasn't a film, or
Right.
I don't know, just staying curious
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
I appreciate the question so much.
Yeah.
And
No.
that film is so important, I think.
Yeah,
Just-
no, I think it is, and then like in this, like especially like even like just the subculture of that film in like the black community, right?
Yeah.
Like what that means. And I had Sean Witzel in here, and I kind of we talked about like black men like putting on the dress and like that whole kind of Hollywood like thing of like you have to do this to be successful. You have to
Right.
like you have to play that role to be successful, and the kind of so I dug into him with that, and he essentially says, hey, like, black actors should be able to play any role without any backlash, without that double consciousness, just as white actors, right? It should be the same, and like that, just appreciate the art and understand that's what it is, right? And so, but yeah, I just thought about, I'm just coming out of all these things that I know that I've reflected on internally, like is this homophobic for me not to like this, right? Or is it like, no, I just don't like seeing something, and therefore like I can turn away, right?
Yeah. And I love that you're asking,
yeah.
right, to just stay curious about,
Yeah.
what is informing this. And I also believe, right, we aren't these like people in little vacuums,
Right.
We are constantly shaped by our environments,
Right.
by our worlds, by
Right.
the,
Right.
the messages that are kind of being instilled.
So people that's listening, don't cancel Deep Dish, all right? This is I'm just no. But I I want more people like myself, anybody else that just they know they have these thoughts, right? They know they have these things and really don't want to be harmful, to just be able to talk, right? And maybe that's with a therapist, maybe that's finding a space, but talk without being judged, right? And that's it can be kind of tough these days, right? But I think like being intentional about where you talk, just putting something out on Twitter might not be the best avenue, right? May not be the best lane because people don't know where it's coming from, and Twitter doesn't have a defined, I guess, theme of like this is where you talk about this stuff, right? Whereas like Deep Dish Conversations, like we know, like people know we're going to be talking about everything community and growing and learning. And
it's a container. It can hold those kinds of really important conversations. Yeah. I really respect that.
We're gonna have to talk more. But I would encourage Nashville, people that are part of the lesbian, non-binary, queer, gay community. Like I would support and participate in a space that just allow folks like myself that are just have questions and want to talk and just to come and just like, hey, let's have a conversation and let me say all the crazy thoughts that I've ever had, right? And then like work through that, right? And maybe leave not agreeing on everything or just still needing I need to do some work, I need to do some thoughts, but knowing that like it's not me versus you, right? It's like, okay, I've identified something. I want to be an ally. I want to be intentional about the work that I've done and just have patience with me.
Yeah. Well, I really respect how you're framing it through this lens of like community. Like I believe that we have these hard conversations like in trusted community with people who know like, hey, I'm here, I'm learning. You can see me as a full human, not someone behind a screen on Twitter. Like you know that I'm doing my best.
Exactly. And I think most of us are trying to do our best. Sometimes we don't communicate, or the optics of how that looks is not communicated well because of like platforms and things. But like I think many of us are trying to do our best, but understanding that like there's layers, right? And I think that I'm glad that we got to identify.
Me too.
Like it's one layer saying I'm an ally and we can talk and we can hang out in certain places, but then it's like it's a line for me where I get uncomfortable, right? And why is that, right? And kind of like just breaking that down. And so I really appreciated that, like just talking to you, and I hope others that like listening and watching like can do that some inner work too, right? And I'm speaking from a straight man's perspective, so other straight men, like I hope you can have those conversations. And if you see me in Tribe, hey, that means I didn't jumped over the bridge and I'm there. And Gert, this has been great. This is anything else like you would like to leave with us? And I definitely want you to put out your information, like for people that may be seeking therapy and may want to, solicit your services and like at least a consultation or something. I want to give you that space. Yeah,
I'm totally here for folks. I've got a therapy den profile, Psychology Today. People can find me, and if we're not a good fit, then I also have amazing colleagues who I can like send folks out to. So definitely available and like here for these conversations. So like if there's like collaborating that you and I want to do outside of this, just so here for it. I really want to just respect like the introspection piece and just the quality of this conversation of like, it's not just the personal, it's the interpersonal, it's the systemic, it's the political, right? There's just, like you said, layers. There's really,
it's so
really
many.
Like a pizza, lots of layers.
Lots of layers, which you finna go through. Gert, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge, your patience, just like what you do and just how you made me feel during this conversation. Like I really appreciate that and making me feel open and comfortable to like talk about things and like express just my own perspectives and thoughts on like things that just I've never really like openly talked about. To people in general, like not people that are not like that I don't know, like that are not really peers. So thank you.
Here for it. Thank you.
Until next time, thank you, Gert.